So I certainly will not hold you too long here before dinner. Let me just say, Mr. President, you are very special in this country for being the educator that you are, for taking on the tough duty, the cantankerous duty of being president of one of the major universities in this country. And to have you here tonight and have you being as successful as you are at OU, we want to applaud you and the First Lady. Sometimes we take things for granted and not really seeing the long-term progress and process. Mr. Bremer and Ms. Bremer and I worked many, many years ago seeking to do something that people thought was very unpopular. With Nate Davis, my colleague at Turner Construction Company at the time, trying to get African American and Hispanic brothers and sisters into one of the toughest industries in this world, the construction industry. And it has been because of the label with the Bremers and through our good friend Ernie Green, one of the Little Rock Nine, we were able to witness here in Ohio to see a Dominic Ozan and an Ozan Construction Company being highly successful. Lonnie Coleman, who Bremers brought into the trades, who became the first African American to be the president of the Mechanical Contractors Association. And so when we were back there, we were kind of like Huggy Lowdown. Who knew that some of the things we were trying to do back then, meeting with the iron workers. I remember we went to the iron workers one day, we had the meeting, and they laid their guns on the table and said, all right, let's talk. And so we talked them out of 30 iron worker positions. He said, give me 40 sons and nephews, and you can have the other 30. And we got to talking, well, yes, we'll take the other 30. When that meeting was over, we said, how in the world are we going to find 30 brothers that would go on the top of those buildings and start doing some iron work? We found something, didn't we, Brother Brown? And that was, so you just never know where life will lead you. Where you are just now, beginning in 2010, as the Ebony Bobcats, boy, I like that name. The Ebony Bobcats. You have brought a new energy to the lives of young people, and you restored the energy of graduates of OU. And so I want to just applaud you for having the vision and being given the vision by God Almighty to be where you are tonight and to establish this outstanding scholarship program. You don't know what that's going to do for this community and the communities across this country. Let me tell you, we had a young man working for us this summer as an intern. He's an engineering student at OU. His name is Phil Wellington. And Philip has done such an outstanding job as an intern. They asked him to make a presentation. And Philip, stand up so these fine people can see you. Not only is Philip an outstanding engineering candidate at OU, he's an outstanding wrestler. All-conference wrestler at OU. But you see, in this young man, who has worked now for the largest construction company in America, to do the kinds of work that he did this summer, OU can be proud of him because he's coming back to us next year, and I hope we will be able to cajole him enough to take a full-time position with us once he graduates from OU. smart OU person because he could have left the office yesterday for his last day, but he couldn't do that. He's leaving next Friday because that's payday. So he's going to leave with a paycheck. And they won't have to, well, brother, they don't have to send it to him. He's going to be right there to take it with him. And on his way back to OU, we wish you Godspeed as you matriculate this year, and you have certainly represented your university outstandingly and exceedingly well. All right. I heard a lot about OU when I first came to Cleveland to work for Carl Stokes. But the first thing I heard about was Court Street. And every time I mentioned Court Street to an OU graduate, they asked me, what year were you there? But what you've done, you have come from Court Street to a journey of Life Street. And what you're doing is tremendous. One of the things that I saw, and I started not to mention this, but I preached the funeral of Panther. Panther was my alpha brother. I preached his mother's funeral, and he said one day, you might have to preach mine. And I preached his funeral, and I never saw the kind of camaraderie from a predominantly white school of African Americans that graduated from that school, that came together to celebrate this young man's life. We celebrated so much that we went to the Lancer. Yes. And somebody burned it down that night. So OU was in the house. Every time I drive by the Lancer where it was, I think of OU. Mr. President, I'm glad you weren't there that day. I had to get out myself before some of my members saw me. Yes, and you know, church folk is something else. On my way in here tonight, I said, I don't want to be late. I don't want to be late. But one of our huge families in our church having their family reunion down the hall. And so I said, they saw me. I tried to ease by them. But they saw me and said, Reverend, come on in. You got to come in here. And I said, well, I got to go to another meeting, Reverend. You got to say a few words. And had I not stopped by the Ratchford family's family reunion, by 10 o'clock tonight, they would have said, oh, Rev thought he was something. Just bypassed us. Going around with those OU people. So I had to go and say, I'm mighty happy to be here. And shook 2 hands on my way out, trying to find the president. So I think I'll be all right tomorrow, because when they give their report, they'll say, Rev, stop by. Dr. Ackerman, she ran Cleveland Heights Board of Education. She was the unsung boss over there. And let me tell you, another outstanding graduate of OU. She made absolutely sure that those children not only obtained an education, but they had to behave themselves. And she took my son, who loved to have a good time, and took him under her wing and helped to make him the outstanding young man and family man he is today. But another thing about OU, all of you that I know are active in the community. you are active in helping someone as you pass along the way. Dr. Maya Angelou used to say all the time, when you learn, teach. And when you get, give. And that's what I see in all of you. You have learned, you have received, but yet you give. Now, we've had some good times together too, but you're always giving. I've seen at some of the places we've been where you've gotten people jobs at the party. Come on in and see this person, that person. And lo and behold, they get hired. So even in your partying, you're doing a great job. There's one fella named Richard Jenkins. I'm still trying to catch Richard. Dr. Houston, Richard used to tell me where the parties were, and by the time I got there, he was going to another one. And I haven't caught him yet. But education, the key to our lives, the key to the world. Unfortunately, a young man that was supposed to begin school this Monday from that place in Missouri will not see a university like OU. Trayvon Martin, a young man walking in a nice gated community, but yet will never see an OU. And so we can never stop loving our young people. What has happened with these young men and the chokehold that young man received in Staten Island, New York, a few weeks ago. Of course, when we were in New York, we didn't go to Staten Island anyway, because it's always been rough. But he will not see his children go to an OU, as Phil Wellington's mother is seeing him go into his senior year at OU. But here is what we must continue to do. Move upright and move forward in making absolutely sure that we place our arms around young people. All right. And hug them and tell them, I know you can. Yes, you will. And I love you. All right. You never know what that would do. Maxine Waters told me once that she was on her way back to Washington one morning, and she saw a young man with his pants hanging down. And she stopped him and said, son, pull your pants up and turn your cap around. And he said, yes, ma'am, and did it. And she said, now, what if I would just say, just look at it, and had not stopped? And this young man, and she said, she was ready for a fight. And he said, yes, ma'am, and did it. That means that there are many of them are just waiting for us to grab their hands, Mr. President, and say hello to them and work with them. I spoke at a school once when I was chairman of the school district here, and a young man told me, he said, sir, as long as I'm in the school, that was at East High, he said, I'm all right. But when I go out on 71st Street, I don't know whether I'll see you tomorrow. And I planned my funeral. That's what we have got to work against nowadays. And for God's sake, we've got to, well, I'm going to say this too. We have got to stop not loving each other. We talk about each other more than any people I know. And we must stop that and love each other. I remember a guy used to work next to me in Turner in New York, And he used to talk about Notre Dame all the time. And, oh, they're not doing this and not doing that. But every year when he got his income tax check, his first check went to Notre Dame. And so I said, Al, you talk about Notre Dame all the time, but you always give them money. He said, I talk about them, but I love them. And I love the school. And by the way, if I call somebody and ask them a question that I want to complain, they'll look to see if I'm giving, and they'll talk to me. You know, politicians have 2 or 3 different lists. You can call a politician's office, and it's up to what you have given as to who will return the phone call. You'll get a return phone call, but it might be somebody that works in West Hill and not in his office. And so what you must do is stand tall for the community. Stand tall for what's right. And we must stand tall for each other, because God would love it to be that way. And final words to you tonight, I would say this. We must know that when we are down to nothing, God is up to something. Don't tell God how big your problem is. Tell the problem how great God is. Happiness keeps us sweet and content, Michael. And trials keeps us strong. Sorry keeps us human. Life keeps us humble. Success keeps us glowing. But only God can keep us going. Oh yes, we must go forward and feel like going on. You know, there was a church song that says, I feel like going on. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. When God moves, we must obey. And so I say to you tonight, go forward, go onward and upward, and keep the Ebony Bobcats alive, keep OU alive, and help somebody as you pass along the way. Stevie Wonder said in his song Superstition that if you see something going wrong and you don't understand, you suffer. But if you look at it and make it right, you will not suffer. You are expressing love. Love the university. Love OU. Love what OU stands for and what we stand for, so that we can bring more Philip Wellingtons to Athens, Ohio. Introduce them to Court Street, but introduce them to Life's Street. Introduce them to Education Boulevard. Introduce them to Success Avenue. Introduce them on God's road to greater heights and greater love. God bless you. God keep you. And let me say this. In Proverbs 24:10, it says, if I faint in the day of adversity, our strength is small. Be large. Face adversity, because 1 plus God is always a majority. God bless you.
Hilton, please don't go. Come back, please. Hilton, come back, please. I think we picked the right person to kick this off, did we not? This is so special, and you were so awesome. You really gave us the message we needed to hear this evening. You captured everything that we're about. And I would like for Gary Nickerson to make, a presentation to you.
Mr. Smith, on behalf of the Ebony Bobcat Network, we present to you this little token of our appreciation. It says 2014 Scholarship Gala, Rev Hilton O. Smith, Keynote Speaker, Ohio University Ebony Bobcat Network.
Thank you so much. And since I was the first one, let me know when next year comes so I can tell you somebody that won't be as good as I was.